Good evening, everybody, and welcome. We are excited that you could join us today for On the Surprising Pleasures of Living in an Aging Body. My name is Alex Elliott. I am the Senior Manager of Events and Engagement for the Public Programs Department of California Institute of Integral Studies, a nonprofit university in San Francisco. As many of us are descendants of settlers, immigrants, or descendants of those who were forcefully brought to this continent, we, CIIS public programs, must recognize and never forget that our university's building in San Francisco occupies traditional, unceded Ramaytush Ohlone lands. If you are interested in learning more about Native lands, languages, and territories, we encourage you to visit native-land.ca. Now, let me first introduce our presenters, Susan Sands and Meg Jordan, and then we will get right to their conversation. Meg Jordan has been chair of the Integrative Health Studies Master's Program at California Institute of Integral Studies for the past 13 years. Dr. Jordan is a clinical medical anthropologist, national board certified health and wellness coach, award-winning international health journalist, behavioral health specialist, registered nurse, author, and president of Global Medicine Enterprises. Dr. Jordan also served as co-president of the National Wellness Institute Board, the first woman leader in the Institute's 40-year history, and received its prestigious Lifetime Achievement Award. Dr. Jordan is former health commentator for NBC Today, West Coast CNN, KTVU TV's Mornings on 2, and acclaimed host of Global Medicine Hunter Radio and Global TV broadcast, Healthy Living with Dr. Meg Jordan. Susan Sands is a clinical psychologist known for her trailblazing work in female development and body-based disorders. She incorporates Buddhist thought and meditative practices in her work with patients. A former journalist, she publishes and presents widely on the topic of eating disorders and body image, and she's a core faculty member at the Psychoanalytic Institute of Northern California in San Francisco. And now it is my absolute pleasure to turn it over to Meg and Susan.
Thank you so much for that great introduction. It's always a pleasure to do events like this for CIIS public programs, but I got particularly excited when I got to get this extraordinary book in my hand and I read it cover to cover, and I'm recommending it to everybody I know, Susan. So thank you for joining us in this wonderful endeavor here to give people this sense that they really have this sort of inner monitor that is going to allow them to come into a more graceful, loving relationship with their body. So your title, let's just start with that. The Inside Story, Surprising Pleasures of Living in an Aging Body. What motivated
first,
you?
Meg, I want to thank you for that nice introduction and for having me here at CIIS. I used to be a supervisor here, many at CIIS years and years ago.
Oh, we do.
And
we exploit a lot of psychologists out there for that hard work. Thank you. Thank you for your service.
Yes, indeed. So the title, I think there's sort of two things about the title. One of them is that it suggests that, the inside story suggests something hidden that you don't know about, that I want to let you in on. And in fact, I do want to let you in on how important, body awareness is for our well-being. But then, it's also, it alludes to the fact that I want to talk about your inner body, sensing yourself from within. In other words, your inside story. And I want to help you have a better inside story.
I like that. I like the fact that, people, it seems like many decades of our life, we're always interested in our perceptions or, how are people perceiving me, all the data, all the information coming from the outside. And you're looking at interoception, all the inward embodiment of that. That's a big shift for people to make.
Yeah, well, that's exactly the shift that I want people to make, to stop thinking about how they look from the outside,
right?
And how they actually feel on the inside. And I just think that it's so helpful especially for women in our society, to get away from the focus on appearance and on how we look. And sadly enough, it doesn't go away, as we get older. People are still concerned about that, and I'm concerned about women, continuing to have those concerns as they get older. So what's great is this new science has come along, and it's, as you said, it's called interoception, and it's just burgeoning right now. There was some talk of it in the early 19th century, and then some in the 1990s, but the last 2 decades, there have been hundreds and hundreds of studies. And basically, what interoception is it's an ongoing process in our bodies. It's going on all the time. There are these sensations that are coming up from small nerve fibers all over our bodies. And these signals are getting funneled, into the into our spinal cord, and then up through the brainstem, where they're processed and mapped somewhat to give you a little map of our body. But then they go all the way up to the something called the insula, which gives us a sense of our whole body.
We do. We have
Yeah.
we both share that. We both share this kind of love of what this emerging sciences are helping in behavioral health and psychology.
Yeah.
Just this new science of embodiment, really.
Yes.
This is a big psych school, as you know, CIIS. We've got 5 counseling psychology programs. We have a clinical PsyD program. And it used to be that just one of our psych programs, somatics, counseling psychology, was the kind of chieftain that looked at the body. But it's spread everywhere now. Every branch of psychology, counseling, master's in social work, clinical social work. I'm a psychiatric RN. We're all saying, wow, the body starts with the information. This whole somatosensory apparatus is finally gaining the respect it needs. And what I love in your book is you even point out, I think, that, Freud touched upon this a long time ago, but then sort of abandoned it as everything went more psychoanalytic, But the sense that the body holds the knowledge, the body holds the signals.
It's the foundation of our being.
Yeah.
The mind is rooted in the body. That's what's so great.
It is great. It's great to be able to share a way for people to do this sort of tuning in to this this triumph, really, of the new body science, and to use it to their advantage. Because what you referred to before too is a sad statement of ageism in our society, in today's modern societies all over the place, where people still feel that without the right look, without the right appearance, somehow I will be dismissed. I will be heard. And I thought that was something we could get rid of in our 20s or 30s, to be honest.
Right.
But wow, it still accompanies. So is this an antidote to ageism?
Well, that's what I'm hoping, and of course to sexism as well, because this is all harder on women, and when ageism and sexism come together, it's hard to be in an aging female body. For some of us. I mean, things have gotten better. There is the women's positivity movement. And you do see, models of different sizes now. Occasionally, we're even seeing some actresses and singers and so on that are heavier than we would have in the past. But still, women tend to be looking at themselves through this male gaze, and the male gaze is looking at young, slender, sexy bodies, And part of that is sociobiological, of course, because they have to carry on the species. And that's a sign of childbearing health, somebody who's young.
Amazing. So that is a biological way to look at it, but there's, we're speaking to LGBTQ audiences as well. Does your book with this interoceptive does the message apply to people across gender spectrum?
Oh, it definitely does.
And not
I
just
mean,
cisgender.
you don't have, you can be of any gender identity
Mhm.
and still gain from my message, which is that it helps so much to get in touch with your inner body sensations. Frankly, I don't think that we of all these different gender identities or sexual orientations are very different on the inside, which is what I'm talking about. I'm really talking about the inside body.
The inside body.
And it works for what I'm talking about works for everybody, you know.
And the narrative of ageism, I think, works across, although there's strong social advocacy within varying sexual orientation and gender identity orientation. There's such a push now in our contemporary life to abandon some of these older narratives that are so troubling and distressing. But I think that this physiological lens you look through, the cultural lens that you've been looking through in this book, there's information in here that's so critical for everyone. I was so impressed. I'm just going to pull up one of my favorite quotes for you as well. You can write and rewrite your inside story throughout life. And you talk about periods of adolescence, menopause, or andropause, or the aging body. These are all opportunities to rewrite your inside story through exercise, meditation, nutrition, social interactions. What led you to say all of that?
I think it's really, it came out of my personal experience. You know, I when I was about 65, I could feel some signs of aging, you know, of course, happening. And also, you know, some signs of anxiety and all kinds of things. And I have done enough meditation in my life that I know that if I just sink down into my body, I immediately feel better.
Yeah.
You know, you feel more grounded, you feel stronger, you feel clearer. And so as I was going about my life, and certainly during the pandemic, when I started writing this book,
Oh yeah.
and there was the anxiety of the pandemic, I kept finding myself really sinking down into my body and finding that calm state. It's not only calm, it's also very pleasurable to be in your body. And that's why I've got the subtitle of The Surprising Pleasures of Living in an Aging Body. Because when you're really dwelling in your body, living in your body, as I call it, it's very, very pleasurable. And this works for anybody of any age. But as we get older, it's so particularly important because our bodies are getting frailer, they're getting, you know, less stable, less reliable. And if we ever needed this interoceptive awareness, it's when we're older. And yet nobody has talked about it. I mean, no aging experts that I'm aware of, you know, have really talked about the importance of body awareness, interoceptive awareness for aging. And yet it's so intuitively obvious that that's what we need more of as we get older, so we can feel really grounded and rooted in our bodies.
And I know when we had our little pre-talk, I said to you, I've had so many decades of working like, there's just a taskmaster behind me saying, go faster, do more, go faster, do more. And therefore, like James Joyce said in Dubliners, you know, Mr. Smith lived 6 feet ahead of his body. I was basically living 6 feet ahead of my body. And I decided on January 1 this year that I was going to start doing this 30 minutes of yoga with Adrienne, this wonderful yoga teacher on YouTube in Austin, because all of my grad students adore her. And I went, all right, I'm checking this out. That half hour of a meditative sit and a half hour of yoga, and I had to modify it a lot. This body was not a bendy body. And so, but now after my 3-4 months of this, I'm suddenly feeling like, the body wants to do this right now. needs to
Yes.
stretch. This hip that was hurting a little bit just needs to go like this right now. I'm finally getting a sense of interoception, what it is, in a really visceral way. So I just want to impart that word to everybody, that this book is real. The information in it is so skillfully skillfully written in a way that just allows people to experience this. And it's not just meditation, yoga, and breath work, but it's this neuroplasticity you talk about in the brain too. The aging brain has some benefits to it about handling mixed emotions, things like that. Why is that? Yeah.
Well, you're talking about some of the changes, actually in the brain that come with aging. Is that what you're
That's
asking
right.
about?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that hasn't been talked about very much either.
Exactly.
People talk about how we're happier as we get older, we're mellower as we get older, we're less reactive. There are some reasons for that, that are part of the aging brain. And one of them is that interoception, despite all the positive things I've said about it, it actually wanes a little bit as we get older. Not completely gone.
No.
But I think at all by any means. But what I mean by that is that we don't react as much in a physical way to our emotions. And that's my experience. I remember, going to final exams in college and having sweaty palms and a fast heartbeat and stuff. And that's just not so true anymore. So our bodies are less reactive in that way, thank goodness. Also, our amygdala, in our brain, which is the part of the brain that is it's kind of in charge of emotions, and particularly negative emotions. It generates them.
Yeah.
That also gets a little weaker. So the amygdala is also, the waning of the amygdala, the declining of the amygdala also makes us a little, calmer as we get older.
Yeah.
And then there's another change that another research group's been talking about, which is we can take more cortical, higher brain control. And so we can sort of take control and we can turn things in our mind. We can change things, situations, just to give them a different, more positive slant.
Yeah. Just to
and that's often called the positivity bias, like by Laura Carstensen at Stanford. She's the one that coined that term. And it means exactly that if we're in a situation that's getting a little difficult, the kids with us might be saying, oh my God, what's going on here? And we're trying to sort of take a positive slant on it. It won't last forever, So I think that's very helpful too as we age, that positivity bias.
It's so great. And I think the other one that you mentioned too in the book is the ability to handle mixed emotions. Like, yes, this is a very sad event, and I'm also kind of content over here. That stretch that, I can feel two things at once now. And I don't have to have the negativity bias normally that it really runs us. It's a survival instinct.
Yes.
Is dampened down a bit. And I didn't know if that was because I'm closer to death, so I've just got to accept things as they are. But it is these kind of neural wiring changes or
that
changes.
plus being closer to death. It gives us a different perspective.
Yeah.
We know that time is limited, and so we better make the most of it and not worry our way through it, but enjoy it. So I think that change in perspective, less time ahead. We better do it now, or we're not going to have a chance.
I love that.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you to do one thing, and that is to tilt your screen so I see more of your head and neck. Do you see that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there we go. Because you were just sinking into the earth, long before I do.
I was sinking down into my inner body.
That's right. And we're going to keep you on camera a little longer.
I want to be up here on the screen.
Thank you.
That's very funny.
Oh, there's one other thing I'd love to talk about too, because I think it really helps people, friends I know who are still a bit obsessed between the difference with body image and body, and not coming into body sense. You made a beautiful
Oh,
distinction there. Could you talk on that a bit?
well, that term body sense is not used usually. I mean, I use it
Yeah.
for having interoceptive awareness. In other words, being able to sense your body from within, being able to feel your body.
Mm,
So that's what I'm calling body sense. It's another word, really. I
it
think
is.
an easier word for interoceptive awareness. Body image is not how we sense ourselves from within, but it's how we see ourselves in our mind's eye.
Oh, our imagination, what we're imagining others see too.
Yes, what we
Yeah.
imagine other people see and how we imagine ourselves. And of course, that's where, a lot of people get in trouble, is with their body image.
Awesome.
You know, yeah.
And I think men are actually in trouble too. I mean, I've always, as a journalist, health journalist and nurse, I've always kind of been an advocate like yourself for women's image and body dysmorphia. I've only looked at eating disorders and everything together. But I honestly am hearing a lot from young men now because of Marvel movies and the hyper masculinized heroes, action heroes, that there's this perfection stance of a male physique. And there's a slight rise in young men's eating disorders as well.
Yes.
Kind of a frantic grasping of ketogenic diets that are just going to chisel them down to, godlike proportions. And so I just getting wrung out with body image and cultural societal norms. Whew, this is tough. This is a tough frontier.
And body image is so linked to self-esteem.
Yeah.
I mean, it's everything. And to depression and eating disorders and anxiety, and it just, body image is crucial. And that's why I want us to have the feeling from the inside, and it really takes us away from our appearance. And if in fact you're on your way to a party and you're worried about how you look or something, just sink down in your body and you'll immediately feel better, because you're feeling yourself from within. Yeah.
These 30 women that you interview in the book, extensive interviews, but you've also really go into the insights and learnings you gathered from other researchers. And the book really blends both of these together. But were they at the happiest years of their lives?
You're saying the interviewees?
Yeah, because you strike me as being at the happiest in your life. And I didn't even know your whole life. I just know that between your smile and the way you reside in your body and the confidence you exude in it just strikes me as, maybe happiness is an elusive word. I don't know, Susan. Maybe it's just a contentment to reside, to fully occupy.
Well, and just being older, there's so many things about being older. You finally feel like you can damn well please. You can do what you damn well please. I mean, you sort of take off the veils, like it or leave it, like me or leave me. So there's a lot of that going on. But what I found with the interviewees is they all said something like, I'm not happy about, my flesh sagging and wrinkling and everything, but it is what it is. I'm just accepting it more. I think there's a great deal of acceptance that can come out of aging.
Yeah.
And they all said, in many ways, I'm happier now than ever before. They didn't mean in every way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we all kind of miss being able to downhill ski in the way we used to. And, there's all kinds of stuff you can miss, but there is good stuff, and it's so interesting that happiness is the thing that's found in, study after study. You probably know about the the study of thousands of people that yielded that happiness curve.
Oh yeah, this is great. I remember this.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And it works all around the world, different societies and so forth. And the curve shows that we are happiest when at the beginning of our lives, and then it dips down in middle age.
Right.
And then it starts going up again. And the year of the greatest happiness on this curve is 82.
82.
And
Hear
that's
that, everybody? 82.
And that's based on, interviews of people on, life satisfaction, happiness, all kinds of things like that.
So great. I think of my own parents at 82, and my mother used to tell me that there's this, she'd say, yeah, you think you know so much about your brain and health and science and all this. She says, but the brain has a little inhibitor in it. And by the time you're 82, it's gone. I'm completely uninhibited. and I thought that when I was in the grocery store line the other day, and somebody just cut me off, and I thought, I would normally just sit here and growl. And I said, excuse me, I had no more. That inhibitor has kind of disappeared. I can speak up for myself quicker, easier. The voice comes out. Now, I know that there's lots of social, cultural ramifications for what I'm saying. Not everybody finds their voice. Not everybody moves into these elder years with a sense of elder agency. But
Right.
I think that the tools and techniques that you're offering in this book are a gateway for a lot of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
What are some of your favorite? Let's go into that and give people some good practical
Some gateways.
pieces. Yeah.
You mean how to really enjoy our final years?
Exactly. How to get in touch with these surprising pleasures. You look at, you've said you gotta meditate, you gotta move, you've got to nourish your body correctly. It's kind of like the wellness champion in me was really excited to hear you just lay out some of these very practical things as well.
Yeah. And you can do it on your own, as I've been sort of showing. You can just decide to sink down and check in with your body. And then once you've checked in, then you know what it needs and you know what kind of changes to make in it. Like when you're lying on the yoga mat, you feel that sore back.
Oh, yes.
And you just move into that sore back more. And then what you're suffering with. You've got the information to move around, stretch out that sore back, move it, So you've got the information. And then we've got all these incredible, which you mentioned, all these incredible practices, thousands of year old practices. They obviously work. And meditation is so good for everybody because it increases your emotional capacity for regulation and your compassion and the sharpness of your attention and so on. But then it's very interesting. There's not much research on older people and meditation, but the little research there is, one of my favorite things is that the brain, actually the biomarkers in the brain are younger. So our brains are better preserved if we do meditation.
Yeah. Isn't that
And
beautiful?
that's shown up over and over again. And some of them have found that it's 7.5 years younger.
I know it. It's been, I've been following it.
Yeah.
I've been
And then,
following.
as you said, of course, eating right. And, exercise is incredibly important as we get older. And the other things, of course, are remaining socially connected. That's really good for being older. Any kind of movement. And I would add to the things that most people talk about, body awareness.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
I think, that we actually have the capacity as we get older for more embodiment because of all the things I talked about, that our bodies are less reactive. I think there's more sort of quiet and space inside, and that we can be more embodied. And some of us embodied really fully embodied for the first time in older age.
I know.
Which to me is just one of the most wonderful things, because embodiment, living in your body, having the mind and body integrated, it's so important for our well-being, for everything.
There's so many ways that we see I had students in their integrative health master's program today. They started giving their oral defense of their thesis and their capstone projects. And one of them in particular was talking about this trauma age that we live in and that we've come through, especially in the last couple of years, and that it's really organizational leaders and workplaces and all need to have some trauma-informed kind of mindfulness in order to work with employees there.
Yeah.
Because the employees are saying, I can't afford to stop and pay attention right now to these things because I have no control over them and I can't expect to get any help with it. I'm on my own. I'm working remote. I'm this or that. There's this continuous, it's not full-blown PTSD, but it is this kind of high level of noise of a cortisol outpouring of stress and anxiety. And it is ubiquitous right now, especially in workplaces.
Yes.
And we're seeing that. You're seeing the statistics as well as a clinical psychologist of the rise of anxiety and depression, not only in the workplace, but in school-age children, in high schoolers, in college level. It's an overwhelming distress alarm right now. And if it goes on too long, there is a disorder in the multidimensional assessment of interoceptive awareness, that MAIA, you described beautifully in her book. If you have her book, page 94, it's fabulous. And it gives about 7 points, I think, of time to check in. Do you notice where tension is in your body? Can you even notice it? Do you notice when you're uncomfortable in your body? There's another one. Can you use your breath, your breathing to reduce tension? I mean, some of these are first time sentences for a lot of folks,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And this questionnaire you're talking about is a questionnaire trying to assess your amount of interoceptive awareness. And
Wow.
so, right. And so many people don't have it and need it so badly right now. John Kabat-Zinn, who started the sort of meditation for regular people revolution. I mean, he was going into workplaces. He was going into various hospitals, and that's the way he started. And I do wish, and I do think, now that things seem to be calming down in the viral world, that a lot of us should go into the workplaces. And, I think it would be the thing to do. It's the social action of the time.
It is.
Really.
Yeah.
To try to help people calm down, but not just through leading meditation, but giving them their own tools like meditation or yoga.
I know.
Or just deep breathing, all the way from the pelvis all the way up, up here, because it triggers a different state. It takes you from this sympathetic nervous system, which is all about, flight and fight, and it puts you into the parasympathetic nervous system, which is all about resting and digesting.
Puts the brakes
calming,
on. Yeah.
Calming. And, you can actually feel sometimes when you do that deep breathing, you can actually feel that switch right around here. You can actually feel it changing. And so we have these tools, and we do have to get them out there. And it's not that other people haven't thought of this, but I'm just going along with you and saying we need to do more of it now. And in the schools, meditate. There are people who meditate with kids in the schools, And I was aware of a project fairly recently of people that went in and taught kids in inner city schools, kids that were particularly stressed, according to their teachers. They went into classrooms where the kids were particularly stressed and taught them meditation. And then they did some pre and post tests, and they found that they actually got calmer. I mean, it was really something.
Well, I think I want to add something to that list, and that is to hang around with the mellow elder. I think that it's as good as I'm thinking about my weekend. I went camping over the weekend with 8 family members, son, his wife, 2 grandbabies, a daughter, her boyfriend, and who joined us but my ex-husband. And I was there. And I thought, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, we'd be at each other's throats. This could never have happened. Now we're a couple of mellow elders, and we're joking about this and that. And it was this big, crazy family camping adventure, fast and furious, over the weekend. And I look at it, though, it was setting an example in a sense. It was that morphogenic field that Rupert Sheldrake used to talk about. We were setting an example of positivity bias, of a lack of agitation or hyperactivity or hyperreactivity. And that role modeling had an effect with everybody else, with my 38-year-old, 40-year-old children as well, who also wonderful. Got to be around a mellower elder. Yes. So you go into this in the emotional body in the book of why we do mellow out a bit, and you've covered a lot of that. I don't mean to have you covered again. I just
wanted to add something in about being around elders, because I think it's also so important for combating ageism.
Yes.
Because if you think of older people as being in some other world, it's like another planet or something, then you're going to hold on to your ageism, that older people are weird, or they've disappeared, or they're not interesting or something. If you can have intergenerational groups and really get to know each other, that is just great. And that's one of the ways of combating ageism too.
It is. Intergenerational groups. I mean, we need more of that, and more of that, especially in a day and age of such reliance on technology, and not to be put to pasture because we don't catch on to technology as fast as my 3-year-old granddaughter, maybe. But in terms of cultivating healthier emotions, that's a lot. I mean, that is unstoppable in terms of the benefits to the human body and to societies as well, that cultivation. So I think we're happiest at this stage. I'm going to go with that. I like that theory. I'm sticking with it.
However, there is still a lot of ageism and a lot of, internalized ageism. And that's the worst, is when we think of ourselves, in less positive terms. We think that, younger people won't want to talk to us because we're boring. Or that kind of thing, or we think that we're over the hill and we can't really do anything. And so, I think that's so important too, because, those studies by Becca Levy show that people that have more positive internalized views of being older, they actually live 7.5 years longer. It's another 7.5. But it's so fascinating because she was able, to take people who answered questions about what they thought about aging, starting when they were little kids, and follow them over the years. And then she was able to take that and add it to another sample. And also look at death statistics. And she was actually able to prove that people who years earlier had said more positive things about aging, and aging people actually lived 7.5 years longer. I mean, when those studies came out, that really rocked the aging world. I mean, that was that's pretty amazing. So it shows how important our views of aging people are too.
No.
And that's another reason to get together with people like you.
And you.
Yeah.
7.5 years longer. Yeah. Levy's team found that older people who even rejected age stereotypes were less likely to develop Alzheimer's. I remember that came
That's
out of
another
that.
study.
Yeah.
Or to have heart attacks.
Right.
That's another part of her work.
Self-perceptions of aging, ridding yourself of ageist beliefs.
Mhm.
Yeah. This is right up there in my book with the meditation, the yoga, the breathing techniques, the releasing of tension, the developing of the interoceptive awareness. That here's one quote in your book here. Levy's team found that positive self-perceptions of aging increase longevity more than low blood pressure, low cholesterol, BMI, non-smoking, or exercise. And then how many times have we been beat up about our BMI? You know, this is like, let's let go of that one right away. So I'm all for it. Oh my God.
Right.
There's a call to action here, really. You know, a call to action, not just for all of society, but like you said, for people to drop the ageist, the internalized ageist. And just like we don't want to internalize an oppressor mentality of any kind. So taking on this kind of freer, more liberated, happier self-talk in life, re-envisioning ourselves in a way, forgetting these negative stereotypes. Did the women in all of your interviews, did they do that better in a group or a one-on-one? Did they join classes to learn that? How did they go about improving this own inner self-talk?
Well, the people I interviewed were just regular folks.
Okay.
I think maybe that wasn't clear in the book.
No,
They were
it
just
probably was.
regular folks, the friends of mine, colleagues, neighbors, people I interviewed. And they ranged in age from like 59 to 91. So I just wanted to learn more about aging from them.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't actually working on themselves necessarily. Some were.
Yep. So they weren't all equating aging with degradation, falling apart. I mean, there was a range of attitudes then in what you saw.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
And for the most part, every single one of them said things have gotten better as I've gotten older.
I love that. Do people realize their own gifts more as well? Your own gifts, your own unique talents. There's always seems to be a search for that,
I think that's one of the most important things that we can do as we get older is to not stop. It used to be that at age 65, you would retire and then you'd want to be at the pool or be on the golf course or something.
Mm-hmm.
Well, of course, we've added 30 years to our lifespan, in the last century. So we retire at 65, we have another 30 years. So I think that you can have a whole other life. And I'm writing a book. I've got a friend who's writing songs. I've got another friend who moved to Nicaragua with her husband. I'm sinking down again. Moved to Nicaragua with her husband to work with a community in the jungle. And
that's wild. That's great.
Yeah. So there's a whole other chapter, and so that's one of the main things I think is to know that you can keep on developing new identities. There's no reason we have to stop.
It's a lot. That's a beautiful thing to remind yourself of. You also write in the book that I think when Gloria Steinem turned 84, people said, now who are you passing the torch to? She said, I'm still holding the torch. What are you talking about? Or something like that.
I'm still holding it, and you can light your torch from mine.
Yeah,
said.
Take that. So
right.
Continue to
and
understand.
That's exactly right. She's still holding that, and she's still illuminating her way forward.
Oh, I know. Very much so.
Right. The other image I like so much that helps me in getting older is we've had this image of the sort of the lifespan as like this.
Oh, the arc.
This is not the happiness curve.
No.
No, this is the opposite. This is, that you reach sort of your peak, in middle age, and then it's downhill and you slide down the other side, into this despairing old age. And if you can dump that image of the arc, which is all over the culture,
all over the place,
and all over art, it's all over everywhere. If we can dump that image. And Ed Diener, who is, one of the positive psychologists, he suggested substituting for that an upward spiral, with many different trajectories.
Fantastic. Yeah.
And what trajectories do you see for yourself?
Yeah. I'd love that image much more. I think the arc is so reinforced in the medical linguistics. Men are told 30 on, they're losing their stamina, their testosterone. Women are told at a certain age, you have nothing but ovarian failure. I mean, the language it's laced with all sorts of things that say your body's not a miracle. Your body's just in a state of death and dying its whole life. And ridding ourselves of that kind of ageism language, it's pervasive in medical lingo, but it's pervasive, I think, in just how we look at sales and marketing language, whether it's on Instagram or it's on TikTok, who are the social influencers right now. And are we really meant to buy things from a 12-year-old who's pushing makeup products on Instagram? So there has to be an active counterpart that's, yes, your book launches a lot of it, but is also shows greater positivity and emotional steadiness and readiness throughout. So a call to action here for people to come forward and join you in this embodied stance in life. It's really exciting for me. Really exciting.
It's very exciting for me too, because we have the chance to revise our vision, and really write a new vision ourselves for aging. I mean, we have particularly my group, the baby boomers. I mean, we worked on all kinds of inequality. We've worked on, sexual inequality and racial inequality and disability inequality, but age inequality, that's sort of a wide
frontier.
Open place. It's the next frontier.
It is.
And so let's try to revision aging as, this upward spiral.
Not just going to buy a birthday card for somebody. You have to stand at that counter a long time. I've got a friend turning 75, and just to find an upbeat birthday card. Every card was an ageist slam of some kind, a derogatory. It was exhausting. I thought, no, I'm not going to bend to these. Okay, that one is kind of funny, but I'm not going to go with it. How do I actually find something else here?
It's really a problem, because the ones that are supposed to be upbeat are all about, getting drunk together.
Yeah. Or losing your way home, or exactly. I know it. Oh, amazing. But it is true. This is the next frontier then for a compassionate, equitable response. I teach neurobiology in our master's in integrative health, and there's this part of the brain, anterior cingulate. It's one of my favorite parts, and it's it's the kind that discerns, and it's always monitoring your environment, and it's always kind of on alert for that. In other words, it can judge. It can judge good, bad, high value, low value. And the flip side of it is that it also self-judges, high criticality, high poor self-regard at the same time. And so what I notice in teaching people more discernment is that you have to teach them more self-compassion at the same time in order to balance out this work. And that it is it's that expression of fullness in the body has to be measured with a big dose of self-compassion too, as you start noticing.
But that the ACC, I mean, is part of the interoceptive network.
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
It is. And it's there to take these sensations and to decide, what's the value of these?
Mm-hmm.
Is it good? Is it bad? Is this sensation coming up? Should I pay attention to it? Shouldn't I? So it's a very critical part, but it's critical in both ways. I mean, it's critical also for maintaining our survival. So if you kind of think about that, here's my ACC doing its thing. It's trying to decide what's good for me, what isn't.
It is, as I can feel it. There's this little experiment I do with the students. We gather 6 of them in a circle, and we say, we're just going to throw the ball back and forth to each other. It's an old experiment, and it was done on college students years ago. And you say, I'm just going to throw it randomly to anybody, and you throw it randomly to anybody else in the circle. However, there's a trick to this. You collude with one of them beforehand, and you say, I'm just going to throw to you, and you throw to me after about 2 throws. And if they were all hooked up on functional MRI at that point, it would be flashing. The ACC would be going nuts, especially the dorsal branch, because they'd say, I'm left out. What is this? Nobody likes me? How come they're not throwing the ball to me? I'm noticing. I'm left out. I don't belong. ACC and the dorsal aspect also looks at belonging and the heavy judgment that you lay upon yourself. So, God, I think I would love to see groups formed and study this book and have a book club about it, because they would have a sense of belonging and a cheerful, high self-regard from just sharing these new secret pleasures of an aging body. And so it's just something I can get pretty excited about. Okay.
I can get excited about it too.
Well, I've been throwing all sorts of questions for you, and I'm sorry I jumped all over the place, Susan. I promised to try to stay with one theme at a time, and I
don't want you to stay with one thing at one time. I mean, I know all this stuff. I like some new information coming in, some new questions. So I really enjoyed talking with you about this.
Perfect. Let's see. I'm going to check in with our staff and see if they've got some questions as well. Don't worry about that till we start Q&A, but I'm going to open up this little Q&A right now, and I've got some coming in now. Terrific. You ready for some from our audience? All right. They're piling in. Will you please nuance for us how you would apply these suggestions, such as moving into your body, tuning into interoception, for folks who have the experience of needing to disconnect from their bodies in order to feel safe? For some folks, trauma has made it feel dangerous or overwhelming to be too connected to our bodies instead of finding a sense of safety through the numbing or disconnection. Wow. Well, thank you for that.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's something, that I do mention in my book because, I am a psychotherapist and I do work with trauma. That's one of my specialties. And I would suggest working with a therapist on getting more into your body, because it is frightening if your body holds all these memories, of traumatic events, and you're afraid of those feelings coming up again. So I think it is best to work with a therapist or a good friend or somebody who's there with you as you try to get more in your body. Yeah. I mean, this comes up at meditation retreats too.
It does.
Some people really contact things that aren't good. So there should be in every meditation retreat, a safe room where they can go and talk to somebody, or a place where they can actually phone somebody, or so on. But I want to add to that it is part of getting better to be able very slowly and safely to be able to get more into your body, so you build more tolerance for those feelings. So then you're not so afraid of what will happen if you let yourself feel more. Because that's, you don't want to live that way if you can help it.
Yeah.
You want to try to change that slowly in a safe way. And I have patients I have one who couldn't contact her body at all. And I've worked with her now for 17 years. Now she can go in there and she can move around in there. She can tell me where the trauma is in her body. I mean, it's really beautiful how much she's changed. So I get to see this firsthand.
Yeah.
But I'm very
Wonderful.
I'm very aware of the problem.
It is a problem. I think it's one in which, when we teach people how to do guided imagery with folks, and they close their eyes. I was doing this at the VA, and vets would close their eyes and have to open them immediately because there was not the safety within yet, and it is a slow process. And I agree with you that the rewards at the end of even incrementally entering are so great, because we don't really heal what we can't feel ever.
Exactly.
It requires a sense of recognition, or noticing, or feeling, or even if it's a titrated dose, a very titrated dose.
But I think it's also sometimes much easier for people to do something more active, like Tai Chi or Qigong, or even yoga.
Those are open, with their eyes open for a while. Yeah.
Eyes open and moving, so you have a sense of agency.
Yeah.
Even sitting on a cushion doing meditation is much too scary for a lot of people.
No. Beautiful. Thank you for that. Let's see here. Maria has a question for us. In the study quoted about age and happiness, what factors contribute to the conclusion the age of greatest happiness is 82? Would you share more information about this study?
It's actually a bunch of different studies that were put together.
That's right.
And they were mainly questionnaire studies of life satisfaction, where you tick off certain things about how happy you are in life. I can't really remember enough more about the questions right now to be able to answer that question very well. But the happiness curve, the U-bend of happiness, there's a book by that name, and you can look it up. You can also Google it.
Yep, the happiness curve. I've seen that one as well, and I do know that it's kind of a strong correlation with the Global Wellbeing Index as well, which is done by Gallup, and they look at issues of equity in housing, education, and they find that the greatest happiness and contentment is not in places where people have massive salaries, because in those places there's often this massive gap between rich and poor, and there's incredible misery at the same time. And in places with this less of a gap and this greater equity among all sectors, then they're finding more satisfaction and more happiness, and people able to claim their happiness too because of that agency. So
in our society, we think of happiness as being hedonia,
Yeah.
like what you get from drugs and sex and rock and roll and success and
instant gratification.
And really, I'm not talking about that kind of happiness. I'm talking more about what's sometimes called eudaimonia, which is really, I think, better defined as well-being.
Very much so.
So, and that's, when it's really a state of mind of just feeling okay about everything. Life is fine and I can handle it. It doesn't mean that there isn't terrible tragedy, unhappiness, frustration, all that, but there's an underlying feeling that I am fine. And that's to me what well-being means. And it's well-being that is so incredibly linked to embodiment and body awareness.
I would say that is the emotion right there, and the feeling and the inner feeling that has this established levels of cognition and consciousness, all culminating in a sense of human flourishing and well-being. And this is where so much good research is being done right now. We're getting such a better idea of what that means. Our Constitution, the U.S. Constitution, used to call it about the life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But there's so many good historians, scholars that have said pursuit of happiness actually meant maintaining your property. That it was not, they weren't talking about being happy. That it was sort of a euphemistic phrase that the gentlemen of the Constitution wrote about their land owning and their slave owning, whatever else they were doing at that time. But that was their pursuit of happiness. So yeah, we've got some refined measures going on about this now. Okay. What are the more representations, another person asks, of both the inner and the outer, the aging body that you would like to see more in media and art? What are more representations of both the inner and the outer aging body that you would like to see more in media and art? Wow. Full spectrum.
That's and is that a question for us? What would we like to see more?
Yeah, what are some more representations that you'd like to see?
Well, I would like to see representations of, actual aging people, actual aging bodies. And they can be artistically drawn or painted, but it's not, it's not, everyone is not Monet or with young bodies. So I think that's part of it. And I would love to know what the participant was thinking, and I'd like to know what you're thinking too, Meg.
Oh yeah, gosh, I thought I watched more TV during this height of the pandemic than any time in my life. Lots of binging, lots of Netflix, lots of this and that, and I was interested in seeing there was a greater representation across the board. And maybe there was this waking up in Hollywood, in other production studios, especially after George Floyd, of let's get some people of color throughout here in commercials and actually starring in shows and leading productions. So there was this bit of a surge in representation. There was even neurodiverse individuals. There was disabilities and abilities. There was, I don't know that there was class differences, socioeconomic differences, but there was some attempt in media. And art, well, I think the artists are always at the frontier. The artists are always representing it. But I'm thinking more of, Madison Avenue, of advertising, of social influencers. Do we see more representation there? Yeah, I think we do, really. But whether or not it's giving people a full reappraisal of what is desirable, what society condones as the most desirable, I don't know that we're there yet.
Yeah, I doubt it. But we want our representations to represent everybody in the society. You were mentioning people of color and disability and so on. I mean, that's what we want.
Yeah.
And aging people are just, one group, and they're not just one group either. I mean, there's so many different kinds of aging people, but we want the diversity.
Mhm.
And things were not diverse in our culture. I mean, if you just think of the sitcoms a few decades ago,
I know.
things have gotten better.
What are some other examples of intergenerational groups that you both have been a part of that led to impactful growth and sharing of wisdom? Intergenerational groups. Yeah. Can you think of some for yourself?
A neighborhood group where we went to bat to stop a house being built on an empty lot by people that we really didn't like.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
it wasn't that we minded people, building on the lot. We just really didn't like these particular people or their plans, which made no sense. And we ranged in age from 30 to my husband, 79.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a wonderful time. I mean, after we got back from speaking at the at the city meetings, we would come back and we'd drink wine out on the deck and have
Nice.
a great time. And I think it's refreshing. That's the word that comes to mind. It's refreshing to be with people that aren't your age.
Love that. I love it. I think I keep teaching just so I can be with people of all ages as well. My friends tend to be around my age, and yet when I get a visit from students, or when I'm with when I'm at a jamboree with the 1 and 3-year-old grandchildren, and I'm with people of all ages, what I notice is, okay, this is really loud. And I just need to decompress a bit. But when I can do a one-on-one with a 24-year-old student or friend, then I'm just in heaven, because I get to hear the full expression of life's joys, agonies, desires, and everything else. And I get to kind of settle into my body and be with them in a way that is mentoring and compassionate and loving. So it brings out the best in me.
Absolutely.
When I'm with different
I think
generations.
they're sort of different. I think that I'm sort of intergenerational inside too. I mean, I think one of the things I mentioned in the book is the older we get, we have more ages inside us.
Oh, yeah.
And I really feel that, because I can still feel my 10-year-old self getting the giggles.
Good.
When I was in church, and and I can still remember my wild dancing every night when I was in college. I'd go out dancing every night. That's still in me.
Oh,
And I
wow.
still remember my worries about my son at different ages.
Yeah.
When I was in my 40s, and
It's
all still
in
there. And so I think we have all these different ages, and we can empathize with more different aged people. So I think that's another very cool thing about getting older.
I have a circle of friends where I live, and we bring in we take turns having people DJ for us, and we dance like crazy every Saturday and Friday night. and my kids just kind of shake their heads like, what is this, your own personal rave? And yeah, it is. In our neighborhood, we dance like crazy. So it's a permission giving for yourself as well, to tap into those different ages within the body.
And of course, our kids hate it. I mean, they get very embarrassed. When we're doing that stuff, like wild dancing, they get embarrassed, but we got to do it anyway.
Got to do it anyway. All right. What are some specific interoception practices you would suggest for aging bodies who have extreme physical or mobility difficulties, but who have never practiced mindfulness? How do they get in touch with their bodies, their inner bodies? So this is an aging body with a lot of physical and mobility difficulty.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I think meditation is the way to go. And you can do lying meditation. In
Mm.
fact, it's wonderful. And it's one of my favorite things to do. And you can do a body sweep. You're lying on your back, or you can be lying anyway, any old way. And you just maybe start at your toes and bring your attention to your toes, and then sweep your attention up your ankles, up your calves, your thighs, and so on and so on and so on. And you spend more time, on your face, because that's got lots of stuff going on. And then end up at the top of your head. But make sure that you sweep the whole body. So that way, you're actually touching the body with your attention. You're actually touching all parts of it, which is really important for learning interoception. And there's no reason that you can't learn it, as somebody with disabilities as well as anybody else through that kind of meditation.
And that ability to be so present with it and to be able to shift attention, like just sitting here with you now, I was thinking how I've been a meditator since the 80s, and I look at the ability to take that inner attention and place it just on maybe your left toes, your left foot. Can you actually shift your attention to that? It's a learned response.
Mm-hmm.
People usually have to wiggle your toes a little bit to be able to shift that. Now, can you throw your attention somewhere else? Can you throw it to a shoulder and get a sense of inside the shoulder, the spaciousness within it? So these sound like a little crazy exercises, but the truth is, it's a muscle of the brain that gets exercised, and you do get better at it. Yes. And the presence, the agency, everything else that comes along with it, this greater awareness of body states really does help us move away from negative rumination, because we realize I can shift my attention. It's powerful. It is so powerful. So
I love William James's thing. My experience is what I choose to pay attention to.
Yeah.
Isn't that great? I mean, he's our forefather among us who are psychologists. And he said that,
that's wonderful.
50 years ago.
Yeah.
He knew what this is all about, moving your attention and learning that that's possible. A lot of people don't get it. I still have a patient who can't move her attention down into her body, and we've been trying for a long time. So you have to just keep working on it, and you work on it in different ways.
There must be different barriers, different obstacles. I think this person with the next question is presenting one of those barriers, and that is, what if you have chronic pain? How does that affect the benefit of interoception, or even the ability? Chronic pain.
Yeah. Chronic pain, of course, it's just awful. It's so terrible to live with. But if the pain, is in one particular place, I don't know if it is or not, then moving your attention, into another part of your inner body could provide some relief.
And that is one of the activities that's done at pain management centers, I know, is the ability to cultivate that attention elsewhere. I mean, yes. it is the same thing that a Lamaze teacher will teach you to do with your breath when you are in the midst of an incredible contraction in childbirth. Just bringing your attention to the inhalation and exhalation just dampens one sensory pathway a bit and heightens another. It's about the best that we can do with our own self-control.
Right.
What is bringing you joy right now? What a great question. I love that. Thank you. I think this is our last question and a good one to end with. What is bringing you joy right now, Dr. Susan Sands?
I would say what brings me the most joy is walking in the Berkeley Hills with friends and my dog.
Oh, yes, especially a German
Yeah.
Shepherd dog.
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
I love German Shepherd dogs.
And we have the most beautiful hills with the most beautiful paths. And now that
Yeah.
we've had to cut down so many trees, we have all these valleys that we never knew were there. And that to me is it's bliss.
It is bliss.
Now I'm also very excited about this book, this book and this promotion.
Mhm.
But I wouldn't say that's bringing me the most joy. I would say that it's exciting and gratifying, but in terms of sort of inner joy and relaxation, all that, no, I'd go for the hiking.
Go for the hiking. I'm going to join you on one of those hikes because I've had German Shepherd dogs my whole life, and I see him behind you on those stairs, and I just want to reach out. What's her name? His name?
This is Willie.
And mine was Wilhelm. You are my soul sister.
We are on the same wavelength.
We are on the same wavelength. Wilhelm's crossed the Rainbow Bridge now, but yeah.
Wilhelm.
Sometime with Willie would be most appreciated.
Was he named that over Wilhelm Reich?
No, he named it because my brother's name was Will, and he said, "Don't name the dog after me," so we changed it a little bit.
All right.
Okay. Oh my gosh, joy. Yes, simple pleasures. Here we are, two women in our 70s talking and having fun about what brings us joy. And I wish that blessing on people of all ages right now. The ease and the ability to just be with that. That is the gift of your book. And I have so enjoyed working with you and talking with you tonight.
Oh, I have totally enjoyed this. It really
Terrific.
has expanded me, and I thank all the participants too. Some wonderful questions.
Absolutely.
And I would just like to guest show to everybody.
Well, thanks for our time together, and we're going to close this session by bringing back Alex to say goodnight.
Thank you all so much for joining us this evening. We hope you'll join us for more of our upcoming talks and workshops. This conversation was recorded tonight, so if you'd like to watch it again or share it with your community, it will be available on our YouTube channel at this same link and later on our Facebook page. We're also going to feature this talk on our podcast, which you can find at CIISpod.com or by searching CIIS Public Programs on your favorite podcast app. Thank you again for joining us and have a wonderful evening.